So this is the third and final video of the house bed that I made for my daughter for her birthday. And I've already primed this thing up and I'm just prepping it for paint, wiping it down and putting a little painter's caulk in all the inside corners. And the paint that I'm using, I used a white satin and I actually sprayed on the white trim on the both the roof and the base and the trim around the windows for that matter. And it was nice that, I did this with the primer. It worked well, so I used it again with the paint. I'm using two shades of paint. This is the lighter color on the inside, and the inside went really smooth. All I had to do was cut in the inside corners and then roll out the walls. And it's easy because there's no trim on the inside. So that was pretty cool. And the same with the roof. To cut in the inside, there was no fuss, and I rolled it out. But the outside took a little more finesse because there was two colors. This is the darker color of the two shades of pink that I got. So I had to try and cut in around the trim. You can see there's a little bit of space in between the window and the outside corner. But once I cut everything in, and I was able to get my roller in the areas that I could fit it, it went pretty smooth. I was happy with that. And I put the whole thing together, and I didn't really like that. I was going to do the base originally all in white and then the roof all in white. And it looked like it needed a little more color on the roof. So I just decided to paint the ends with the same pink, the darker shade. And it's a little tricky to cut this in to paint it because it's kind of shaped like a triangle. So most of it I wound up having to do with the brush. I was able to fit the roller in just in this little area in the middle, but it went fine. I was happy with it. Um, and then I went around and started the second coat. So same thing. I started with the base, and then the roof, and the second coat on both the base and the roof went nicely. And then it was time to do the actual inside and the outside of the house. And the thing about the second coat is that it does go on much smoother than the first. I should say that in between coats, I hit everything with the foam sanding block and wiped it all down with the tack cloth. That's something you definitely want to practice to get a smoother finish on anything, is always sand in between coats. But as I was saying, the second coat always goes on a lot smoother than the first because you take your time to cut in the inside corners, but then with the second coat it's just more about making sure you get enough paint on the material so that nothing shows through. So that's the second coat will definitely take you half the time that the first coat took you to do. So that's always something to remember, and then you're almost there. But one of the last things I did after I got everything second coated was I went around on the trim one more time and hit everything with the white. Just tried to keep my hand as steady as I could, just to try and cut it in so that it would really look like a professional job. And then I was done with the paint. I was happy with that. And then it was on to the roof, which was I decided to do wood shingles, and I broke it up into three bays of shingles. And so for the first bay, I was able, when I started from the bottom, I could use the whole shingle. I started from left to right, glued it up, and nailed it on with a brad nailer. And at the end, I just left an 1/8 inch overhang. And then I kind of made these just two ticks right where the next shingles would start, and I clamped on a straight edge so that my shingles would land right on it. But they were a little bit tall, so I had to start cutting them. So I cut about a third off of the shingle, and I cut a 36-degree angle into the top of it, the same angle as the roof, and that went pretty smooth. And I did the same thing for the final row, but I just tacked it on, and then I jumped around to the front and did the same process. Went from left to right, clamped on my straight edge, and I put my second row. And then when I got to the third row, I put the shingle so that it would kiss right at the top. And after I glued everything up, the reason why I tacked on the back and didn't nail it off completely is because I knew I was going to have to fuss with it a little bit because all of the shingles are imperfect, so I wanted to nail them off at the same time. So some of them I had to lift the front ones and lift the back ones so that 35-degree angle look, I could try and get it to be as tight as I wanted it to be. And after I nailed it off, I pulled off my clamp and I hit everything with a sanding block just for the unruly pieces that kind of sat up a little bit. But after I sanded it down, it was virtually seamless. So that was cool. And I wanted to put a little finish on it. So after I taped everything off just to protect the painted edges, I hit it with a little bit of water-based polyacrylic. And there are all sorts of things that you can use to finish this off. I'm using a water-based because it dries faster and it doesn't smell as bad. And it's a semi-gloss. I had it laying around the shop. I would have preferred to use a little satin on this, which is not as shiny as semi-gloss, but I needed to get this thing done. So I just went ahead. I put a really heavy coat of semi-gloss. I just did one coat, and I was pretty happy with the way it finished up. So that was it for the paint in the house. And I had made these little French windows, and I hadn't put the hinges on, so I clamped them down on my table and marked them out. And then I used a trim router to cut most of the material out, and then I squared it off with a wood chisel and a hammer. And I mortised the hinge twice as deep as I normally would into the window. Normally, you would mortise half of it into the window and then the other half into the frame, but I put it all the way deep into the window so that I could flush mount it on the frame. It just made for easier installation. I don't always do it that way, but as I said, I wanted to get this done, so uh, that's the way I did it. But the windows, I actually made them a little bit bigger, and then I trimmed them down so that I can get really nice reveals. And as I said, I just flush mounted them on, so that was easy to line them up. And one of the other things I had to do, the last thing I had to do, was I made these flower boxes and mounted them right under the window, but I didn't like how they looked, so I added a second base to it and screwed it on. And here I'm unscrewing it because it served me well to have the second base, because I cut a slight bevel in it so that it would be pitched up a little bit. And I used pocket screws to screw it to the wall underneath the window, and the front was kind of pitched up a little bit. And then I was able to mount the flower box back to it, and it held it tight against the wall. And that worked out great. And I even made these little bouquets, these flower arrangements, and I put them in there. And that was it. It was time to present it to the birthday girl. And I did. And my son helped me. And he actually helped me in the shop. We filled the nail holes together. So he was really excited to give this to her. And she loved it. She was really genuinely surprised and happy. And that made me happy. And making this whole thing made me happy. It was nice. Obviously, it means a lot to me because it's for my daughter. But this was a gift, and I kind of built it on the fly. And I think it came out nice. So I hope you enjoyed all three videos. And if you have any comments, you can leave them for me. I'd love to hear from you. And you can also check me out on Instagram and Facebook at Are You a Fixer? Thanks for watching.